1% of the world's vehicles, India accounts for a staggering 11% of the global deaths caused by road accidents. According to the World Bank, road crashes are estimated to cost the Indian economy between 5 and 7% of GDP a year and overwhelmingly affect lower middle class and middle class Indians. The bank recently approved a $250 million road safety project to be implemented in the seven Indian states of Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, and West Bengal. The number of deaths in 2021 was in excess of a shocking 170,000 people. That makes it 465 deaths a day and about 20 every hour. To get a perspective on this largely ignored daily crisis, Mayank Chhaya Reports spoke to the well-known Mumbai-based journalist and writer Vidyadhar Date, who has written extensively about the subject.
With
Yeah,
with barely 1% of the world's vehicles, India
yeah.
accounts for a staggering 11% of global deaths caused by road accidents. How do
Yeah,
you view this and how do you explain it?
I think it is mainly the inequality on Indian roads. You see, the rich and the way they drive, and there are so many poor people, and most of people are marginalized, and they are poor people. You see, this Cyrus mystery case is very different. You see, it is almost suicidal death. Recently, the biggest news was about Cyrus mystery, and I respect him and. Anahita Pandol also, she's a very, I mean, she was the driver,
Right.
but unfortunately, they were not wearing seat belts and they were over speeding. So that is a problem with the rich, and they are the real problem on Indian roads. And the terrible inequality, and the poor are the main sufferers. And but every time the blame is laid on the poor, because as if there are no pedestrian facilities at all, as are
Yeah.
aware. And you see, right near my house in Bandra, the Salman Khan incident took place, and and the rich, they completely distort the whole process. You see, in the Salman Khan case, he ran over a man sleeping on the road, and it dragged on for years, and the whole case was completely distorted. A witness, police constable, who was the main witness, he died in very suspicious circumstances. He died a very poor man, destitute man. So there is a terrible exploitation in the whole system. And then in the Sanjeev Nanda case, he was the grandson of
Right.
the naval chief, and his father was a very big arms dealer.
Right.
You see, he killed more than 5 people in Delhi. And his lawyers, they were indicted by the Supreme Court because they completely fabricated the evidence. So the whole process works against poor people. So that is the main problem in India. So there is the whole, I mean, in other countries, especially France and other countries, they have brought down the accident rate. In France, Mitterrand, when he was the president, it was bringing down the accident rate was one of his main election points, and so all countries have, but we are following the American model, you see,
Right.
and over motorization. And in America, the death rate is increasing now. Though they started very well under President Johnson, and they started this whole process of scientific investigation. But there again, that system is not working now again. So we have to really respect the poor. That is the main thing, and they are marginalized, and that is the main trouble
Right.
in India.
Right. I'm
And the
glad you.
governments are,
No, go ahead.
uh,
Go ahead. Go ahead. I said.
yeah, And the government is also very unsympathetic. You see, the Transport Minister Gadkari, I know him for many years, so I'm very sorry to say this. And otherwise, he is one of the more intelligent ministers. But on this issue of speed, you see, he is the main man. I wrote only a few days ago before Cyrus Mistri's death, uh, criticizing Gadkari because what he has been saying, oh, with highways now from Bombay to Delhi, we can reach in 10 hours, and Delhi to Lucknow in some couple of hours and all. You see, that is not what the, I mean, these are not the main issues for people. You see, main issues for people are entirely different. How to reach from your home to the railway station or the bus stop or local mobility for work.
Yeah.
You see, but the whole, and this glorification of speed by politicians and film stars totally irresponsible. There are a lot of factors working on this issue. And then again, you see how the government works. You see, recently when BJP's MLA's son, he and his six friends, they were all drunk and they had a late party, and all of them were killed in Vidarbha.
Yeah.
And Prime Minister, our very dear Prime, I mean, very yeah, good man. So he announced an award, sort of compensation of 2 lakh for each of them. Now, they were not poor, they were paying huge capitation fees. They were all from very well-off families.
Right.
And for the poor, there is no, after that, he has issued so many sympathy,
Right.
statements for all other deaths, but no compensation for others. You see, for the really poor, and so only in one or few these cases. So here the BJP man was involved, so they paid compensation. I mean, this total discrimination, very unfortunate thing.
Right.
So,
You know,
so
I,
it's
I'm
a very unfortunate scenario.
I'm glad you mentioned Cyrus Mistry, as
Yeah,
for my viewers' benefit, who was the former chairman of the Tata Group.
yeah,
On the day he died,
yeah,
over 460 other people also died on an average. In fact,
yes, yes,
the hour that he died, 20 others died as well. But
yeah,
they were all just statistics. And
yeah,
Cyrus
yeah,
Mystery made the headlines. What does it say about
yeah.
our Indian society when you look at something like that?
It's, that is the very big issue. But there is total insensitivity. For example, I mean, whole journalistic fraternity also. You see, a very good journalist died in Delhi last year. She was killed last year. Renu Agal. She was a BBC correspondent and she was working for print. And I must, I mean, I may be pardoned for taking a little credit on this. But so the print merely announced that she died in an accident. That's all. So that raised my curiosity. I said, how did she die? I mean, what kind of accident? I mean, the journalist dying and you're merely saying. Then it came out that she was killed by a drunken high officer of the Defense Research DRDO, Defense Research
I see.
Department
Yeah.
set up. And he was drunk and the news was suppressed. I mean, can you believe it? And I wrote a lot on that on Facebook, and so many people came to know. Even journalists of Delhi did not know how she had died. They merely knew that she had died in an accident. That's all.
I see.
When I wrote about it, I got a lot of likes, and so many people then came on the my page and they said we did not. Her close friends, they were shocked with all this information. They didn't know. She died 1 month after the accident, so she was in hospital and she was traveling in a cycle rickshaw, and that cycle rickshaw driver was also killed. So the journalistic fraternity itself is, I'm very sorry, but the whole, so they were totally not informed at all about their own fraternity.
Right. Uh,
Somebody dying like that.
is this apathy cultural, Mr. Date? Because I see routinely people just don't care about others dying on the road. They are just like road kills.
Yes, it is cultural. I mean, if I may go back to the ancient times or scriptures, I mean, because the whole, you know, priority on the road, I mean, who should have the right of way? You see, Shankaracharya, the philosopher, and, you know,
Right.
he was walking on the road and so-called Shudra man, he came from the opposite direction. And Shankaracharya being a Brahmin, others told the Shudra, you can't walk like this. So the Shudra made a very philosophical argument. He said, Atma, you're talking about Atma,
Mhm.
and our Atmas are the same. How can you claim superiority?
Right.
So Shankaracharya recognized, he said, very good. So I take you as my master
Oh, I
because you
see.
have really said something. So the main thing is we must respect others, you see, on the road. So it is not merely a question of rules and acts and all that, because only then we can really solve these problems. Because you see, Indian Parliament recently revised the Motor Vehicles Act and increased fines for. See, that does not help at all. It has, and the worst thing about India, we have overtaken China in the last few years, and we have the highest number of deaths in the world. I mean, it is climbing. You see, that
Right.
is a disgrace. You see, other civilized countries, they're reducing through very, very harsh and very stern measures, and they are disciplining. But in India, that's very unfortunate. So there is no enforcement. There is so much corruption in the RTO,
Right.
and licenses are bogus. There are no proper tests in the RTO. You know, driving tests are not properly conducted. Even the crash tests of motor cars, they are poorly conducted. I mean, since we are on Tata's and Cyrus
Right.
Mistry, the other Tata creation, the nano car,
Right.
it was very fragile. So it is unfortunately it has met its end, and it's a very sad scenario. So,
Right.
so the whole picture is very gloomy actually.
Yeah, here in the US, at least the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, which is notorious for being unfriendly, but at least they enforce rules enough so that the kind of driving that goes on in India does not happen here. And there is a general respect for lanes and traffic lights that you see. It's part of people's, uh, being. It's not something that you have to teach them. I would say 9 out of 10 would respect all traffic rules without any problems. But you don't see that in India for some reason.
So the whole system is unsympathetic. So many, you know, at many traffic junctions, you are given only 5 seconds to cross. You know, can you
Right.
believe it? I mean, even an Olympic champion cannot do that. And because being a journalist, I've been covering Mantralaya, the state government headquarters
Right.
in Mumbai for. I mean, I
Sure.
did that for almost 3 decades. And right in front of Mantralaya, it is very difficult to cross the road, and it's very unsafe. You know, some very high level bureaucrats also live there nearby.
Hmm.
There was an Inspector General of Police called V.W. Pradhan. He was living there only. He himself found it in very unsafe, so he used to write letters in Maharashtra Times, Marathi Daily. So, and that was about 20 years ago, more than that. And since then, the situation has not improved one bit.
I see.
Actually, with the metro, which is an absolute disaster for so many cities in Mumbai, so safety problems have increased because they are occupying so much space. So there's, I mean, in multiple ways, there is an assault on common people. They are literally marginalized, and there are no footpaths. And the attitude of the rich, you know, I walk very often on Pali Hill,
Right.
which is,
Right.
as you know, a very high profile area with all film stars.
Hmm.
and there is no footpath on the entire hill. I mean, maximum number of all these, so many cars, very luxury cars operate there, and there is no footpath. And, and what they have done now, it's an uphill climb, it's very long.
Right.
So you can't even rest on the road outside a building. There may be a wall, but they have put spikes there on the walls. So you can't sit there. So that is how life is made miserable for common man. It is very antagonistic relationship between the
Right.
rich and the poor. So, so it is mainly what I would say a class war, and undeclared class war, you can say.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it. I was coming to
Unfortunately,
that. Yeah.
yeah. And unfortunately, all our intellectual class is very silent on this. I'm very sorry because, and especially the Delhi intellectuals, I'm very sorry. I mean, many of them are very comfortable in their big university campuses and all of them own cars. And some of them are very good in their academic work, but they're very insensitive to these issues. You see, for example, in a communal incident, people are killed. Of course, all sympathy naturally. I mean, they're doing a very good job. But when it comes to these lakhs of people dying on the roads, there is amazing insensitivity and silence on these killings. I mean, as Engels, the collaborator of Marx, he
Right.
said these are social murders. I mean, caused by this. Of course, at that time, this issue was not there, but other
Right.
murders, I mean, all because of illness and all other, these are socially caused murders. And that is what is happening. And among academics, I would say only our Dinesh Mohan, unfortunately, died last year of COVID. He is the best. He was the best authority in India, and there are not many. Hardly he's an exception. And Geetam Tiwari, his colleague from IIT Delhi,
Right.
she is doing very good work, and they have a very good. He created a very good center in Delhi for accident prevention research. So it did a lot of work, but they are all sidelined because they are not. They are taking a very objective line. So the government is not very encouraging.
Right.
So these are all very troubling factors.
Last year in 2021, about
Yeah.
170,000 people died in road accidents. If you extrapolate, you're looking at about 1 million families were affected by these deaths because one family will have about five
Yeah.
members. I'm just doing a rough
Yes.
multiplication.
Yes.
1 million
Yeah.
families impacted year after year after year, and there is just
Yes.
no there is just no response, concerted response.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a World Bank study on this and how it affects the poor, and it creates an absolute misery in the whole family. People lose their livelihood, and so it's a very, but somehow it just doesn't register, and
Why doesn't it
it's
have
really
political resonance? I don't understand this.
no. Unfortunately, that's not happening. Actually, and the politicians there on this issue, they're extremely. I mean, they're the main people who are promoting speed and all
Yeah.
this irresponsible behavior. I mean, there's so many, right from Karan of Kerala, former chief minister. He boasted about his speedy driving,
Right.
and even Nitin Gadkari, who has been promoting speed, he himself met with a very serious accident some years ago, and he was in bed for a year. And still, you see, only last year, a BJP leader in Bihar, he was drunken and he drove a car and killed 10 children in Bihar. School children, they were coming out, they were totally blameless, totally innocent, and they were not coming the way, they were standing. His car killed them, And the BJP, I mean, the much of the media, because I was monitoring it very
Right.
carefully, much of the media completely ignore, I mean, suppressed the information. Later on, it came out, and nobody knows what has happened. And in so many cases, we just don't know the progress of all this. So there is no public pressure, and so the political class is not at all doing its job.
One of the points that you have made in your writing is about the
Mm.
SUVs. You make
Yes,
you make a contrast that while SUVs are very safe for the user, they are very
correct.
dangerous. They are very dangerous for others. And with
Yes.
with with wealth rising in India, people acquiring expensive SUVs, this is going to get even worse.
Oh, it is so distressing. I go to the Joggers Park every morning in Bandra, and so many rich people, and they come there SUVs. I mean, see the contradiction. You come there for a walk, and you bring an SUV, and you are creating dangerous situation. You see, inside it is very nice for them to walk. Outside, they are creating a traffic hazard.
Right.
They're making life miserable. So that is how the rich and common people. These are the contradictions of India. And the SUV, sports utility vehicle, that itself is a contradiction. It is not an urban road vehicle
No,
at all. It was not
it-
meant to be. You see, the SUV came into, I mean, according to some experts, it was created in America because of the inferiority complex created by the defeat in Vietnam. So they wanted to create some kind of very aggressive vehicle. I mean, like that. So manliness and
right.
your so that kind. So uh, and so you feel very power. You see, the very concept of speed among the rich is very wrong because that is not your own energy. You are not using it is a somebody else. I mean, the fuel energy, but you
Right.
feel empowered. You see, without spending your energy, when you get so much force and speed, you. I mean, it's completely ridiculous.
True.
You acquire speed at something, and it is not a bicyclist. He uses his own energy. He or she they use their own energy, and that is real
Right.
sport and real life, and that is how life should be led. But this is completely distorted situation.
Somehow masculinity has come to be attached with speed. Uh,
Yes, yes, yes,
it's seen as a
yes,
masculine endeavor to be able to speed.
yes, 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 yes.
I see it everywhere, even here. So I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
it exists in India too significantly.
Yes, very much. Like Salman Khan himself is an example of very
Right.
false. I mean, the whole pumped up. You see, it's a completely ridiculous situation. So that is why the bicycle, whenever I write in support of the bicycle or walking, people say, "Hey, what are you doing? This is a change situation." Whereas real civilized world is going for bicycles and walking. Paris is now going for a 15-minute city.
Hmm.
So you should be able to cover the city in 15 minutes. So promoting the bicycle and walking, these are the real decent human, uh, uh, I mean, values. They promote,
Right.
they
Right.
represent real correct philosophy.
Yeah.
But this itself is being neglected by this masculinity and that kind of culture.
Right. To conclude, Mr. Date, I'm interested to know your perspective on the problem of PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder caused by such a huge amount of road accidents that happen in India, and nobody looks at the PTSD aspect of this.
Which aspect?
The post-traumatic stress disorder
Yes,
(PTSD).
yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that is what my friend Nauzar Barocha of Times of India, he raised the issue about Anahita Pandol, who was the driver of this Cyrus Mistri case. And I can't imagine how she must be feeling or how she will feel for the rest of her life. I mean, she is now in hospital, and but somehow the rich, you see, there is another research which shows that the rich have a tremendous sense of that entitlement. They think they can do anything. So they're not, many of them don't feel guilty at all. And there are very good studies on this.
Huh.
So and you see another attitude about pedestrians. They think it is all right to kill a pedestrian. If you conduct a survey, you will find that many intelligent people, because many of us are motorists, if a pedestrian comes in the way suddenly, they say, "What is wrong? He should lose his life." I mean, I'm
Right.
not exaggerating. These, if you conduct a little survey, you will find that. I mean, for a little mistake of a pedestrian, I mean, I can't even say many of them are not committing a mistake because there are no footpaths. I mean, and you will find many people are being killed without any fault of their pedestrians. They're standing on the roadside. Most of the killings, if you analyze, the pedestrians are completely blameless.
Right.
They are either standing at a bus stop or and people sleeping on the road. Now, in the Alistair Pereira case,
Right.
this young man, 21, oh, again a Bandra boy on Carter Road, not far from my house, where I go for a walk there. Poor people were sleeping on the pavement, and this man drunk. And many of these drivers don't have even a driving license. Some of them, and they're drunk with power and literally drunk with
Right.
liquor. Uh, So he killed these people, construction workers who should have been provided proper accommodation. But the state did not do that, and we don't care for it. And some people chose to blame those poor people. Why were they sleeping there?
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
This is how the society operates. And Carterwood again is a very, very posh area, as you know, along
Right.
the seafront. It is one of the best, probably after Marine Drive, it is the best seafront. And so that is the situation. So there is no sense of guilt. There is a terrible sense of entitlement among the rich,
Right.
and there is total contempt for the poor. That is, and even the bureaucrats. I'm very sorry to say there is. I've been observing bureaucrats for more than 3 decades. There is a terrible decline, and they just, uh, I was in Times of India for many years, and Gadkari came once to our office for a chat, and there was another bureaucrat with him. So I asked them, since I mean, you are talking so much about progress. Why don't you do something? At least start with the proper footpaths.
Right.
So the bureaucrats' response is really worth noting down. He said, "I will remove even the existing footpaths because they are encroached by hawkers."
I see.
I mean, you want to deprive. I mean, it shows the kind of understanding of society these people have. So they don't know to provide facilities for people at all, and because they think it is not their job. Many of them say it is not a constitutional obligation.
I see.
That is one of the things they cite, that providing, but what they forget is protecting life is your constitutional obligation.
Absolutely.
Maybe building a footpath may not be, but it is again legally you have to provide footpaths. I mean, it is the minimum you can do. And so it's a very sad situation.
And finally, Mr. Date, do you ever see town planning becoming more people centric rather than vehicle centric?
What becoming?
Town planning becoming
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's a very big subject. And very shockingly, many even architects I have found, they have not heard of Jane Jacobs, who is a pioneer in this field.
right.
And she was a very politically sensitive lady who opposed the Vietnam War. She was And she left America in protest against the Vietnam War, and she settled in Canada, where and she launched a tremendous fight in America for several decades, and she died a few years ago at the age of almost 100. And she has done very basic work, and she's the most recognized authority, but many architects don't even know. So the whole idea, her thrust of her writing was that whole system has to be for pedestrians and not. She was totally against the domination of the motor car.
Right.
So she is the person to be held, and so many people, they have no idea at all of her major work. That is the very unfortunate. So the trouble starts right at the highest levels, right from academics to bureaucrats and politicians. They're the guilty men, I would say.
Right. 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 On that note, Mr. Date, I want to
So,
thank
and
you. Yeah.
if I may also,
Yeah. Sure.
Chomsky, he he said America is a terrorist state. So India may not be a terrorist in that sense. It may not be invading other countries, but in this respect, it is a terrorist state,
Hmm.
because the whole it's a terror on the road. You see, there is another very good expert called Hillman, professor. Very wonderful work he has done on children and safety. Now he has made a very good point. I mean, the terror on the roads and how terrorist state. He says we're treating children like prisoners. Prisoners have shelter, and they get free food, and but they cannot go out. You see what has
Right.
happened, and children have to do the same because of terror on the road. They're confined to homes, so this affects children's development itself. You see, unsafe roads are very bad for the psychology of children,
Indeed.
and the dominance of cars again is inhibiting children's playing. And in Bombay, it is becoming, or in many urban centers, children cannot play even in the building compound because all the space is taken over by
Right.
cars. And so, if not many children are dying on the roads, it is because their parents are afraid. They are not put on the roads. But
Yeah. They don't come
civilized
out. Yeah.
countries are civilized countries. But in England, there is a very good system. Walk to school. So they form a chain. Children form a chain, and they hold hands and walk to school,
Right.
and that provides some safety. So when we have this invasion of motor vehicles on the road and this terror on the roads, we are spoiling. I mean, we are doing great damage to the whole psychology of children. Making, I mean, the whole there is a fear psychosis
Right.
in a
Right.
way. So there is no democracy in that sense in India. And the first thing that should, but somehow it is our leftists don't notice it somehow. I mean, the
No,
first thing you come out on the road and then you realize that India is a very unequal, undemocratic country. I mean, we do have freedom, of course, in many ways, and voting and things like that. But you see, as soon as you come out of your house, you realize that India is not a democratic country at all, because you can see the inequality. And that is how, I've been walking. I refuse to buy a car. I mean,
right.
so all these years, and I've been walking in Mumbai for more than half a century.
Right.
And I use mainly public transport, and I walk extensively. So therefore, I know the misery of people. So, and that is what made me write a book on this subject. And so that is the sad part, and terrible situation for ordinary people. So one must experience. And another thing, so many well-off people, they have stopped walking on the road, so they don't really know how life is unsafe. Most of us use the motor car. I
Right.
mean, they have all become very lazy, and people just refuse to walk on the roads. You see, the very fact of going to Joggers Park for a walk and not walking on the road. What a contradiction this is.
It
And
is.
it really, I mean, it really shocks and saddens me.
Yeah. Now,
That,
hopefully, your voice will be heard sooner than later. That was one of my objectives to engage you in this conversation. I want to thank you for your time, Mr. Datta.